So here's kind of a funny question that I want to ask you. When do you have your players roll their dice in games? Because if you're coming from a game system like Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder, or D&D, you roll dice for basically everything. So when do you roll dice in a game like Avatar Legends or Monster of the Week, in a 2d6 Powered by the Apocalypse game, or more roleplay based games? Where do the dice rolls come into place? And obviously it comes into place in combat, but outside of it in RP moments, when do you do it? Because there's not like an investigation check. Well, that's what we're gonna be talking about today. So what's up everybody? My name is Chris, and if you like these videos and if you like my channel, be sure to click that subscribe button and the little bell icon to get notified for all my video uploads. And before we get into the content of the video, a very special thank you to my sponsor of the day, Patreon! Yes, my patrons are today's sponsor for this video, so thank you all so much for helping support this channel and support me while I make these things. There's not a whole lot of us, but I love every single one of you. Specifically, very special thank you to my top tier patrons, Amaldine Shepard and Rutana. You two are amazing. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you all in the next video. The one that I'm about to be doing, fuck. So thank you all so much for helping me out with this. Let's get into the video now. So like I said before, the topic of the video is, when do you have your players roll their dice? Well, the simple answer is whenever you feel necessary. That's the genuinely just like top of the floor GM answer is, if you feel it's necessary for them to roll a check, find the check that's gonna be relevant for them and have them roll it. That's really it. In games like D&D, Pathfinder, and Call of Cthulhu, there's a list of skills that you get to choose from that you can say, hey, roll this skill check, and they get to do it. Sometimes they might even ask, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to do this check. What do I have to do, or what would my character be doing for this to happen? And those are some things that you can call rolls for. You can have them call those rolls, or you can readjust and have them do a different check, because that's not exactly what's gonna be what fits here. There's all these different 2d6 Powered by the Apocalypse games, or roleplay heavy games that work really well without a lot of dice rolls. And whenever I first started playing these games, I thought I was doing something wrong because I wasn't having my players roll as many dice rolls as I thought they were supposed to. I'm used to D&D where you walk into a new room, if their passive perception doesn't make it, one of them's gonna ask you, hey, can I make a perception check? Or hey, I'm gonna look around the room. So they get to make perception checks, they get to make investigation, they get to call for these animal handling checks because they wanna talk to the squirrel across the courtyard. But in a game like Avatar Legends, that's not exactly what happens. You have an entire list of basic moves that anybody can do at any given moment, but the players don't exactly just choose, this is what I'm doing. They just get to say, this is what I'm doing. I'm going across the courtyard to talk to the squirrel. I'm gonna go talk to this guard over here. I wanna convince the shopkeep to sell me this thing at a cheaper price. These are all things that you can just do in the game, and you can talk and do these things, and then the GM gets to choose what fits best from the basic move pool. Now I can already hear you saying that's really similar to what's already being done, right? Yes and no. In a game like D&D, you have all your moves that you can do at any given moment, and you get to choose what moves you do at any given moment. You get to choose the actions, you get to choose the spells, you get to choose what's happening in that moment. Whereas in a 2d6 game like Avatar Legends, you just say, this is what I'm trying to do, and the GM gets to decide whether or not you make a check for that, or if your character just does it. So as a GM, when do you decide when somebody does that check or not? In my opinion, it'd be whenever you feel like your character can't just do it immediately. You wouldn't make an earthbender roll just to make a tent TP out of rocks or anything like that, because that's something they could feasibly do on their own. Now, if, for example, that they were doing it out of metal and they just learned metal bending, that'd be something else to keep in mind. That'd be something to consider in that moment. But if they're just doing it out of regular rock, they could just do it. But then you start getting into things like heat of the moment. If they're in the middle of a chase scene, or if they're in the middle of a high stakes moment where the walls are closing in on them, these rolls that they might be able to do otherwise normally, they might actually have to roll things like, This gets a lot into RPG theory, which is something that I think is really interesting, specifically because it varies GM to GM. No one GM is gonna have their own specific thing that works 100% of the time. Everybody kind of deviates in their own ways, and I think that's one of the most interesting things about this, because I like calling for rolls because my players like rolling dice whenever they want to. I'll try to like see what they're doing and see if any of the current things fit the situation. If it's something that they've conceivably already done before, they do consistently enough that they're proficient with it, they just do it automatically. But if it's something that's like brand new to them, if it's something that they're trying to do under pressure, like if a firebender is running away from earthbenders and they're trying to like use their fire blast to like launch themselves over a wall. In my first earlier games, I had just let them do that, but at this point I'm realizing that that would have been an act under pressure roll that I kind of just let them get away with for free. Interesting. That's just something to keep in mind here. Because you as the GM, you get to decide when somebody's gonna make a roll whenever you want to. You as the GM get to decide when they make a roll at any given moment. You don't have to have a specific reason for making a roll. In my personal opinion, I feel like it makes most sense to call for a roll whenever there's gonna be a stressful situation. If it's gonna be somebody sitting on their bed and they're trying to pick this lock, if they have enough time, the rogue's probably gonna do it. If somebody's trying to melt this thing and they're blasting enough fire at it, if they have enough time to do it, it's probably gonna happen. If they wanna spend that time, they wanna spend the hour blasting with fire, more than likely it's gonna happen. That firebender's gonna melt through that lock eventually. But if they're trying to do it in a fast manner, if they have any type of stress around them, like somebody's closing in, or if there's like a fight looming behind them and they're trying to do it really fast, that's gonna be where you actually start throwing in the rolls. So if firebender trying to burn through a lock or trying to burn through a wall or something, that'd be an act under pressure roll in my opinion. That'd be a rely on your skills and training roll, because you're trying to rely on your skills and your training to burn that fire as hot as possible in the most precise way possible so that you can cut through that lock faster than anybody else. That way you can get out of here really fast without dying. And at the same time, if they were trying to do it but there was no stakes whatsoever, if they're just outside the gate and they're trying to cut their way into the gate, they might not even have to have a roll. It's just something that they'd be able to do over time. There's somebody in the comments a while back that they were just saying, well, what's to stop my players just from saying, I do this and then I crush them with a rock? Because that'd be a roll. That'd be a roll that they'd have to make to hit them with the rock. And that would actually be an attack roll. That'd be a status condition inflicting roll because they'd be trying to trap that person under the rock. They'd have to roll the relevant modifier and hit with the attack right then and there. Because there's a fundamental difference between combat situations and RP situations. Combat situations, I honestly genuinely feel like have the most defined roles across anything because you're trying to focus on an honest and fair fight at that point across the board for the GM and for the players. You're trying to make it as even and as fair as possible without, giving any one side a massive advantage to the other. Whereas RP situations don't have that rigidity with it. They have a lot more leeway than any other situation. So it's up to the GM to kind of pick and choose when they want to give their roles. So since it's up to the GM to decide these things, my current criteria when it comes down to when my players get to roll, it's a kind of a list of 3 things. When I feel it's most thematically appropriate, when is something gonna give the most drama for the moment? If it's something stressful, high stakes, or high octane, that might be a roll moment because, well, it's gonna cause everybody some stress. If they fail, and we move forward. We fail forward at that point. If they succeed, well, we succeed and they get exactly what they want. Or if it's a mixed success, we kind of get the best of both worlds. I get a slight succeed and they get a slight succeed, so both parties are happy-ish. And in addition to that, if it's a low stakes moment, if there's nothing really happening here, if my players are asking to do something and they want to roll for something, I'll let them roll for it if it's something thematically appropriate. Say like in D&D, if somebody's trying to convince somebody they did something big bombastic and they're trying to use persuasion, but it's all a lie, I don't care how much you're trying to persuade this person, it's really a deception roll. I understand your persuasion's a +8, but if your deception's a +5 still, you're still getting a pretty good bonus there. It's a little different if it's only a +1, but that's beside the point. In a Powered by the Apocalypse game like Avatar Legends, one of the biggest things to keep in mind is you're really not gonna have a whole lot of rolls. You as the GM don't roll any dice, and your players only really roll dice whenever it's fundamentally necessary. You just kind of RP and you explain how things happen. You let them roll their way through life, just existing and talking, until there's a fundamental moment that a roll would be appropriate. Whether it be like an act under pressure thing where you use your skills and training, whether it be a... Let me grab my binder with all the information because I forgot the list all of a sudden. You just kind of wait for a thematic moment where it's gonna make sense. If the party's talking to this NPC and they're trying to force them into something, if they're trying to intimidate them, you'd use the intimidate move. And if they're talking to an NPC and they're trying to convince the NPC to do something, it might be intimidate, it might also be trick, it might be plead, and it might genuinely just be push your luck just to get one of these rolls because they're already on thin ice. The NPC already doesn't either trust them, believe them, or think that it's gonna be worth it across their board. Because, NPCs aren't stupid. They have their own morals and stuff. Be sure to click the video up in the card to check that out because I did that video last week. Ha! Was that a subtle ad? No, not very subtle at all. But it was nice, I liked it. And that's not even getting into the aspect of Avatar Legends where there's balance moves. When do you use a balance move? When do you have somebody roll for something like that? Almost entirely when they start doing something that would be against their alignment. Just to steal a D&D term real quick, if a lawful good paladin's trying to kill somebody out of cold blood, that is not a lawful good thing, that is an absolute evil thing, and that's gonna be rolling against their alignment at that point. Their god might have something to say. So much in rolling dice in a Powered by the Apocalypse game is just waiting for the right moment to actually throw a dice roll in that's actually gonna make sense. At the end of it, I genuinely feel like Powered by the Apocalypse games are a lot of fun. They give players a lot more freedom when it comes down to things, but I do think they have a lot more back end on the DM to keep in mind because there's not just clear roles that you have to keep in mind for. There's a whole sect of roles that might fit with a whole bunch of situations. They're really simple because there's a lot less rules and a lot less roles that they can do, but it's a lot more difficult for GMs, I find, because, well, you have to make a choice. You have to decide which of these roles is going to be more thematically correct in that exact moment. And for new GMs, that's a little overwhelming. In D&D, if I'm looking for something, I know it's going to be a perception or investigation. In this, it could be a lot of things depending on what I'm asking and depending on what I'm doing. But long rambling mess aside, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry, Jonathan, for this video being all ass backwards everywhere. that in mind, if you guys like this video, be sure to click that little subscribe button and click that little bell icon to get notified for my video uploads. Over here on the right side of the screen, there should be 2 videos. One of them is one that YouTube thinks you're gonna like, and the other one is a playlist for Avatar Legends videos. Everything from how to play the game, homebrew rules that I think are really fun, and more. With that in mind, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Pulling some fucking Markiplier in here now. Nice! I am re-recording this because we had some last minute additions, so a top tier thank you to my top tier patrons, Amaldine Shepherd, Rutana, and Boom Mike. Thank you all so much. You're the reason I'm able to do these things. You all are amazing. I love you all. Thank you so much.